Welcome this afternoon to our, I don't know how many, is this a virtual tasting that we're on? Like lots of good farmers everywhere and people that have, made their living from agriculture, I think we'll start talking about the weather. In fact, I think we've spoken about the weather in the beginning of most of these.
Well, there is a common thread.
There's a common thread. We've got rain again.
Rain again.
Yep. And after an entire year of last year, and in fact, we worked out this morning that we're only about 30 mils off already this year, our total from last year.
Right.
So in 4 months, we've had almost the same rainfall
Right.
for the whole of last year, which is quite a, it's a good start for this year. It was pretty, just sort of describes how average last year was.
Well, we are pushing towards 100 mils with what's forecast over the next 24 hours. So it's made an absolute change to our season. You wouldn't recognise the place if you were here in summer.
No, and it's actually also come with the rain, has come the cold, and it's
feels like
minus something.
4.6.
Minus 4.6.
I think with wind chill.
So everyone, I'm going to stop Facebook for a moment because the phone has decided not to go landscape.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Hang in there, everyone.
We'll be back.
For those who aren't on Facebook,
Yeah.
we'll just chat about the weather a little bit longer. I left our Nashdale property this morning to some Sago-y, sleety snow, and the mountain is closed, so there is well and truly a chill in the air, but I don't think it matters where you are in Australia at the moment.
I think the other obvious thing to note, I reckon, in the last little bit has been the colour of the leaves in the vineyards.
Well and truly, autumn has hit.
Literally gone in the last 7 days, everything's turned and changed colour. So we're very much in that wintry
Feel.
phase.
How are we going, assistant?
It's the assistants.
She's about to get sacked.
So many weeks of good work.
There was some, for those who asked to watch, there was some tinkering of said camera.
Yes, right
inside a minute of open, so anyway.
So how are we looking?
We're not getting a lot of feedback.
Now come to me. There we go.
Alright.
All right.
Welcome back, everyone. So enough about the weather. The only thing that it is the perfect day to be talking about Cabernet. We have well and truly got the scheduling right.
We have
on Cabernet.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
And the only thing we're missing is some food and a fire lit somewhere. We're actually sitting in our existing cellar door at the winery today. Due to one, the rain, but also the cold and wind, it's not a day to be sitting in a tin shed.
No.
So we've decided to go with the air conditioning.
Yes,
today.
it's much warmer in here
It is.
than the tin shed would have been.
So we are going to talk about some Cabernet.
So today we've got, a bit like previous weeks, if you've been following us on previous tastings, we've got two to try today. A mountain range version and a new topography version. And I guess we'll sort of cover off the details and the differences and the similarities as we sort of go through the tasting. But again, just as a recap and a bit of a refresh, mountain range all about being more fruit forward, brighter, fruitier styles of wine. Very much a drink now kind of style.
Yeah.
More of a drink now style. Not to say that Cabernet is going to age and cellar anyway, but not to say that wouldn't cellar, but it's certainly made in style to crack the top off and, with that note, maybe I'll just pour a couple of these.
The other thing to mention here is that our original planting here at Printhie was Cabernet and Shiraz, and in fact, our very first Printhie wine, which is a 1999 Cabernet, was the first wine made under the Printhie label. Way back when.
I don't know if you can see that label there.
Yeah, we've
Looks-
moved a long way.
Looks a bit different to today, but that was the very first one.
So they were off vineyard planted in 1996. So our very first planting, which is actually made by Andrew Margan for those who are Hunter Valley fans.
Yep.
He used to buy fruit from the vineyard here and did so for some years, and was the first maker of. So Cabernet has played a big part in the Printhie portfolio. The other product that I'll mention for those who have had it is our Swift Family Heritage product. which we've made since 2008. Four. 2004 in fact. Has I think.
Why do you ask? Why do I know that? Do you ask?
I didn't ask.
No, you did. I happen to know that because I got a bottle out that I found in the cellar today to drink with the assistant on the occasion of our wedding anniversary tonight. And I thought, Cabernet,
Yes.
2004. That was nearly. We would have been drinking it perhaps at our wedding. I'm not sure.
So Cabernet's played a part in our portfolio for some time. The newest addition essentially is the topography. 2018, which is what we're going to taste today, was the first time we'd done a topography or an equivalent within that mid sort of range for Printhie, and we'll explain why. So Cabernet, both Cabernets are planted here on our estate vineyards.
Yep.
So we're looking at lower elevations, 620-30 metres above sea level, more in that redder limestone soils, heavier soils, which are ideal. You know, if you look at Cabernet throughout the world, but probably most iconically here in Australia,
the Terra
Rossa soil, which is a different structure of limestone, but nonetheless, limestone plays a key part.
One of the other key reasons is for growing at this elevation is that it's it is our latest ripening variety. And so, as you can see today, looking out the window, it's now the beginning of May. We'd normally be finished vintage anyway, but all of a sudden it's got very cold, very cool. Often we can get caught, if you grow Cabernet too high and too far up the mountain, you can get caught with it not getting ripe enough. So all the Cabernet that we grow and that we make wine from is all this lower elevation stuff in order to guarantee, full ripeness at vintage time.
A little bit of a fun fact, Cabernet is actually the most widely planted variety in the world. It was surpassed for a short period of time by Merlot, but it is, once again, the most widely planted varietal throughout the world, which gives you an indication about how hardy it is to grow. And we certainly see that in the vineyard here. Obviously, the vine growth and the wine that ends up in the bottle are two separate things, but it is a really hardy grape that tends to grow.
I love it in the vineyard.
It's great in the vineyard.
It grows quite vertically.
Yes.
It's very neat.
It is very neat. That vertical growth means that you can control the canopy very well. It tends to be low to sort of medium yielding, so disease, thicker skins, there are a lot of reasons why growing Cabernet is sought after, and it is without a doubt. In saying that, making good Cabernet, growing good Cabernet isn't as easy as just putting them in the ground. So, trying to get the balance of the vine, that woodiness. So, particularly in a cool climate, you want to get rid of greenness, and a lot of that can come from imbalance in the
too much canopy.
Correct, too much leaf to fruit, and not getting balance.
We don't talk much about viticulture, apart from sort of glossing it over a little bit and talking about the sites and stuff. But it might be something interesting. Actually, we've got Charlie Simons doing the thing next week.
Yes.
Who is by trade the viticulturalist. So perhaps if you've got any questions, or specific viticulture questions,
he can bore all of you.
He could really bore you to tears if you can understand him, and give some viticultural answers and maybe a bit more nitty gritty. So if there's anyone out there who does have a particular viticulture question or bent, next week's the time to be tuning in. And listening.
So the other thing to just note, and another fun fact, is where Cabernet Sauvignon comes from. I know. And there's a bit of curiosity around this, but essentially it's a blend, a chance. In fact, I don't have a clue how these are discovered or how they find. Essentially, it is a combination of Cabernet Franc, and Sauvignon Blanc.
It was a late night.
It was a late night. So interestingly enough, some of the key components of these wines are tannin, the Cabernet side, but also high acidity, which is, there's some thought that comes out of the Sauvignon Blanc component of the grape. So why is she laughing?
The assistant's thinking.
Because Charlie is watching and has commented on Facebook that your comments were a little bit harsh, and he's not that boring.
Tell him to shut up and go back to work. In the rain, outside.
Yeah, in the cold.
So here we are, Ed. Let's talk some wines. For those of you that have the wines and have bought the tasting packs, or those who have, and a lot of people do, which we've discovered, order these after the event. So for anybody watching, the videos are available on Facebook and YouTube, so you can go back and taste. And so a number of people do this post. But for those of you that do have wines, we're going to start with the Mountain Range. As we always do in the cellar door, if we're doing a tasting, we tend to drink from our entry level through to our reserves. Because of the style of the wine, we tend to go from high acid freshness into a wine that is a bit more tannic and more weight.
More structure.
More structure.
Yep.
So we will start with the Cabernet, which is the Mountain Range, which is 2017.
It is 17.
Do you remember anything about 2017? It was a lifetime ago.
It was before 18.
Excellent.
Yep. And from memory, it was a pretty good year.
Yeah.
17, we've seen most of the 17s that we've made, red and whites, have all been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And so 17 was the first of our succession of dry vintages. Winter of 16 was very wet, and so the vines got away really well in 17, but they finished very dry and very hot.
Yeah.
And it was the first of about 3 vintages that started to really feel like, drought.
The key here is, and we always talk about elevation, the vineyard we're talking here, and these come from different vineyard sites within our estate property, but we're at the lower elevations here in Orange. So the key here is that our winters are a little bit milder, and our summers are a little bit hotter than the higher elevations. So for a variety like Cabernet, as I mentioned, we get better ripeness through that climate. But we also don't get, one of the keys there is we don't get the volume of rainfall over summer and autumn as we're harvesting that we can get on the higher elevations. So
traditionally, and we're very lucky, and what probably makes Orange a good viticultural area is that
definitely does, not probably.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Is that most of our rainfall doesn't happen in summer and autumn. It tends to be winter, spring rainfall, and that suits viticulture really nicely. Mainly because it means that that critical vintage period is drier, and you can go out and harvest the blocks based on factors that you can control, just sugar ripeness and that sort of stuff. So we very much enjoy often a drier period around this time. Saying that, this year's a bit wet. But anyway,
we didn't pick any fruit. So Mountain Range Cabernet, 2017, as we discussed, machine harvested. So this comes, a portion of this comes from both our vineyards, our Phalaris vineyard and our Printhie vineyard. The Printhie vineyard being our old estate, the older and the winery side. So machine harvested into the winery, fermented through static fermenters. So that is, we're using pump overs of juice, not hand plunging. Whereas when we go to topography, we want a softer tannin structure and extraction to build with that fruit. Whereas here, we're trying to build up that freshness. As Ed said, again, Mountain Range, a bit more of an aperitif style, so we want lovely vibrancy and freshness. But you also want, particularly out of cool climate, tannin structure of Cabernet can be problematic. So we do want to treat it quite gently so that it's a wine that's approachable early and quite young. But you've got that lovely underlying sort of Ribena fruit.
Yeah. Despite the fact that Cabernet is a very structured grape variety, and when we say structured, there's often lots of tannin and sort of coarseness on the palate as a young wine, being grown in a cool climate lends itself to very much softer tannin. So we actually have the ability to turn wines out at a much younger age and still be very soft and approachable on the palate. So despite the fact that this is only, a couple of years old, it's still very approachable, very easy to drink, very, very supple almost on the palate. You on the money there. We often get that Ribena, black curranty kind of character,
which is very varietal.
Yeah,
Cabernet.
Absolutely.
The key, and I often discuss in the cellar door with customers here, talking about our red wines in particular, the aromatic intensity of those wines can't be overlooked. It's the first thing, obviously, that we notice about the wine as we're tasting, but there's a lovely intensity that comes with fruit out of orange, and you see that really sort of pronounced in Cabernet, I find. Very varietal, but very much in a cool climate style. So that is that freshness, as opposed to those warmer climates where you're getting that riper sort of jammy fruit, and you tend to get a bit more of a cigar box.
Yeah, we often talk. We often, you know, those bigger wines from warmer inland areas. We often talk about Christmas cake and muscatels and these dried or stewed fruits characteristics. Whereas again, we're talking very fresh, you know, blackcurrant, blackberry, you know, very bright, fresh, clean styles of fruit flavour. So
from my perspective, without going further, delving in too much into the wine in terms of technical, I find it's particularly this wine, a great match sort of for a midweek red meat style meal. You've got that, as I said, that lovely freshness that you glass while I'm cooking, which I don't cook a lot, to be frank, but when I am,
whilst waiting for the delivery there,
correct. But also matches well once the food's on the table. So I'm very much a Cabernet with lamb or gamey kind of stuff. Right.
I tend to Shiraz to steak and beef, and then Cabernet to more lamb, say venison, gamey stuff. And in fact, just today.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, our resident,
a lazy viticulturalist,
who apparently just watches YouTube. No, not YouTube, Facebook during the afternoons. He did a bit of sausage making, and you'll notice next week if you're watching that Charlie's got a bit of a funny accent. It's a bit of a cross between somewhere in Africa and somewhere in New Zealand, despite the fact that he lives here in Australia. And he's gone back to his heritage, and he's made a bit of curly sausage.
You're not going to try to pronounce it. No, right.
But it is a blend of a few pork, beef, it's a bit of spices, and I'll tell you what, went very well with Cabernet at lunch today. So that's one to keep an eye out for.
So I'm going to push this along, because we say this every week that we're going to try to keep this short.
No, this week we're going 30 minutes.
And as a bit of a segue into the topography Cabernet, I'm going to mention the alcohol levels.
Okay.
So the mountain range is quite low, 13%.
That won't bore anybody at all.
No. Whereas when we go into, and we're talking two different vintages, 17 and 18, the reason I bring it up is because it's a question that people often ask in terms of style of wine and what we're getting. A correlation between alcohol and ripeness. So in orange, to get rid of that greenness, which is an absolute pet peeve of mine, I have an absolute aversion to capsicum.
Yep.
The devil's food, as I refer to it.
I recall this from a young age.
And one of the green characteristics of Cabernet that is often referred to is that capsicum character. And for me, that is an absolute no-no in Cabernet. So ripeness is really important. Now, that's not to say every wine has to be 14.5%. It's very much dependent on the season that we've had. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that a mountain range wine of 13% Cabernet still has that lovely ripeness of fruit, and we're seeing that blackcurrant as we are here. Now the topography also is made to be a bigger, denser style, and a little bit more alcohol helps with that style, but they don't necessarily have to carry a certain amount of alcohol to be a ripe, lovely, juicy, vibrant style.
I have recollections of one of the best ones we've made, and I just can't remember which vintage it was, but it was only at about 12.5%. What year was that? Do you recall?
No. Those vintages around 12s and 11s and bits and pieces were always going to be low, being cooler years. But for us, the key here is ripeness. So in terms of making harvest decisions, we're not just looking at numbers, we're looking at how that juice looks in the glass when we press it off in sampling. And then we kind of, we move from an analytical decision into very much a flavour decision on the basis of ripeness. So jumping into the topography, as I said before, we've never done a Cabernet at this price point, so this retails around $26.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for us. And we've always known that Cabernet has had the potential to do more. I mean, some of the greatest wines of the world are Cabernet based out of Bordeaux and places like that. And we've known, and we've always had our Swift family heritage, which is often Cabernet based style that's at the very other end of our spectrum. but we hadn't had something in the middle. So we knew we could put a bit more time and effort into a product.
Yeah. So
this, and this is the result.
From the outset, this is 100% from the Printhie estate vineyard. So here at the winery, and they're the oldest vines, Cabernet vines we have on site. So you're looking at vines that were planted in '96. One of the key components there now is that they are self-yielding, really. We prune them.
They don't take a lot of control.
No, we prune them pretty harshly. They're all spur pruned, but they control their own yield really well. So we know we're going to get a certain quality off those vines year in, year out. Part of the other reason for making a wine here is that we'd been seeing this slow decline in yield over the years, and Cabernet has a tendency to do that. It gets quite a lot of trunk disease and whatnot. And so in terms of viability of those vines and the work we're doing in the winery, there is always a need to look to where you're placing the fruit. And so we needed something in a different price point from a cost of growing. But we also saw that quality was coming through it as well. So these were wines, even at the mountain range end, that were seeing a lot of time in oak. And so a bit more of an investment here, which goes into the topography, would see a pretty strong improvement in quality too, which no doubt is what's happening.
I mean, one of the biggest differences I think is certainly it's vineyard selection, and making sure we're getting the best bits out of the best blocks.
Mm-hmm.
But and you mentioned it before, these are in static fermenters, larger volumes. Again, we go back to smaller, open fermenters, more gentle.
So these are all hand plunged. So these go pumped into.
That must be a hard job.
Must be a tough job.
Must be a hard job.
They all go into open fermenters, and then we do, twice daily, we hand plunge them, stand up on it and plunge them by hand. The reason for that is to do with tannin extraction in many ways. What we're trying to do is get a lovely soft tannin to match that fruit. The coarser and the harder you work those skins and seeds, the more aggressive that tannin structure will be. And given that our wines aren't big, full-bodied styles, we don't want a really heavy tannin structure.
Saying that, a Cabernet like this one here is probably at the big end of the cool climate, Printhie Wines,
style
spectrum. And yet, I still find that as a very bright and clean style as well.
Yeah.
One of the hallmarks of Cabernet is always structure, and it's one of the reasons they sell it really well. And we actually use Cabernet quite widely across the winery because of that factor.
Mm-hmm.
Things like Merlot at the other end of the spectrum for us are very unstructured. That's not really the word I'm looking for, but they don't hold their form very well over time, and Cabernet helps to sort of provide that structure in the back end. So we often use a bit of Cabernet in other wines, just in little proportions, to provide a bit of structure elsewhere. And you can see in this one by itself that despite the fact that it's, even as a young wine, approachable, easy to drink, doesn't grab you anywhere, it still has that length, and you can feel it's got sort of a present sort of structure there. And I would happily, and the idea with these is that they can sell.
Yeah.
This is an 18. I confidently say that's going to look pretty good in 10 years' time.
So straight into the glass, you can see again that lovely aromatic intensity. There's immediate savouriness that comes through over the mountain range. The mountain range, you see more fruit drive, whereas here you're starting to see some of that savouriness that is as much a fruit and an oak component. So here there's no new oak in this wine, and we use a combination of smaller oak barrels, but there is also a larger Foudre 3,500 litre blend component that goes into this wine. So we want that complexity and that comes out of the oak, and you see a bit of that. I see a bit of that straight on the nose with some of that savouriness that comes out, chariness that comes out of the oak.
Look, for me, there's an immediate just whiff of oaky influence there. It's not out of context and it's not over the top, but in comparison to the mountain range that I don't really pick up much there until you get it on the palate. I do detect a little bit on the nose there, which I quite like, and I think a wine like Cabernet happily carries that. Cabernet is a variety that will happily sit in barrel for an extended period.
Yes.
So we are happy to see a little bit of that. But as we've mentioned in previous versions of these tastings, oak on cool climate styles is very much, you need a deft hand. It can very quickly sit over the top of all the good fruit that you've got there and the whole reason that we do it. So once again, it's not about any oak and it's not about for any period of time. It's the right oak for the right period of time to make sure that it's just in the right proportions.
And here you see that building structure immediately. So, you've already got a structural variety, and then the oak that we use is help tying that together and sort of give it some balance with the fruit, the oak, the tannin.
Now, how long can you cellar the topography for? I've got a question from Mark.
That's a great question. Given it's an 18 and it's the first time we've made it, it's a bit of a crystal ball, to be honest. In saying that, we've got some history with the Swift Family Heritage, as Ed said, pulled out in 2004 to take home tonight, and I would expect it to be looking fairly good.
Yeah, I would have no problem saying that's going to do 10 years.
Yeah.
Cabernet whilst the thing about aging wine is that the biggest change is you lose the fruit intensity.
Correct.
So as a young wine, you see a lot of fruit and you don't see much else. As they age, that fruit diminishes and there's something else comes up, and you start to see those secondary aging characteristics. You start to see the cedar, leather, smoky characteristics that often develop after a time. And will it look the same as it does today? Absolutely not. But is it still a good wine? Yes, it will be.
The interesting thing too, we're a relatively young business by wine standards still, and we were pretty green coming into it. The way we finish the wines these days compared, if you look at that 2018 compared to 2004, the way we treat acid and sulphur additions throughout the winery and bottling and everything else are vastly different to the way we used to. And a lot of that is, research and data that we've found out years since, subsequent. But my belief is these wines will hold their freshness and hold that fruit a lot longer than our older wines did. Yep. So you will see that talk about flattening the curve, something relevant at the moment. We have flattened the curve of the Cabernet in terms of the way it will age. Yeah. You will see that fruit hold on longer and that freshness hold longer in the bottle, I believe.
The thing that excites me about this wine probably is just the fact that we've given it an opportunity to shine a bit more. Yeah. For a long, as a variety. A lot of years it only went into mountain range and a tiny little portion went into Swift Family Heritage, and we played around with it on the edges. I think the thing that probably made us consider this more seriously is in 2015 we did a super duper Cabernet, and I think maybe there's a few bottles of that left, but I think that sort of cemented in our minds that this is actually a variety, and we've got the quality and the sites that we can do more with this. And subsequently we've ended up here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how these develop and how they look in time. I think there's some real potential.
So the $1 million question, I guess, what do we drink these with? Now,
I did all my gold earlier.
Yeah, you did.
Well, we've had a few comments, people saying what they're thinking.
Right.
From Perko on Instagram, meatball stew.
Yep.
And he's made particular mention of capsicum.
Aha.
And Fiona on Facebook, she's having roast pork tonight.
Yeah. The key with Cabernet is to make sure you manage the tannin structure. So the best thing to handle tannins in red wines particularly is fatty foods. So the fat in pork and I
think that's maybe why
slow cook,
I think lamb goes
correct.
well with it.
It helps break down the tannin structure and bring the fruit forward. So Drew made mention today, we were talking about it, hard cheeses are the same, they've got a high fat content, so they're really anything that you can match with.
You'd often crack a nice cab.
Correct.
A cheese plate.
Correct. And so the reason for that is that fat helps break down the tannin structure and helps balance the wine better in the palate. So, that pretty much gives you a pretty broad window in terms of what you can drink Cabernet with, as long as it's got some fat.
Bit of fat.
And Mark's having it with roast lamb.
Yeah,
excellent.
Now Charlie did send through the right word for the sausage that he has created.
And how does one pronounce it?
Boer Wars, maybe? I'm sure there's a South African.
Yeah, it didn't sound like that when he said it.
It sounded very funny. We didn't, to be honest, we didn't understand. We weren't paying much attention to it.
And I know people are having lots of trouble with the sound. It is echoey in here. We are at our cellar door because it is threatening to snow outside. And
we're working on. We are working on microphones for to improve this going forward. So bear with us there. We're going to get better. We're getting better. We're getting better.
For such a slick performance, I know it's disappointing.
It's amazing.
So listen, unless you have more questions, I think we've done a really good job of keeping this tight.
Have we been going along today?
Yeah, no, very well. 30 minutes.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think we can call it a day because I think Instagram's cutting it out. We've got bad service out at the winery, so we've got lots of technical issues today. We apologise.
Apologies, everyone. The video will be on YouTube.
Yeah,
so we are just recording. So if you want to watch back, hopefully the Facebook has worked better. Just a reminder to everybody who's watching, we do a special for tastings, 15% off the entire Printhie website, printhieWines.com.au. Just use Friday Tasting as the coupon code. 15% off across the site.
And we're still running the free delivery.
Free delivery on other orders.
You do need to put the free delivery in the box.
And so, most excitingly, next week we have Pinot Meunier that Charlie's doing.
Yeah.
Somebody will be holding his hand in case he gets too.
I think you maybe.
Too off script.
People sick of me.
They probably might be. So anyway, thank you everybody. I hope you enjoy your Cabernets. I certainly will. The weather is perfect, and we will see you next Friday.
That'd be great. Lovely. Bye.